thank you for joining me today. I'm Nathan Garner, the Project Manager and one of the Tech Support Team leaders here at Dynamic CCTV. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hikvision Evidence Management Solution. So this is based on using the HikCentral VMS platform, which is a licensed system. This is primarily used for control rooms, council divisions and police forces, as well as a kind of centralised place for exported footage or incidents to be stored in a secure location. So without the evidence management solution, incident data that you download is not encrypted or stored in a specific location on site. If a user downloads the footage through the control clients or through IVMS 4200, it's just stored locally on their PC, unless they choose to save it somewhere else or copy it across to another location. But there's no kind of audit trail of who's accessed that downloaded footage, or there's no permissions that you can set to limit who can actually access that. If the person's able to get onto that PC, they can view that footage or that data regarding that incident. And a lot of the incidents also still rely on paperwork, which can cause issues when you're sharing it between different departments, or if you need to share footage with the police or anything like that from control room. This makes it easier, as the SFTP server can be remotely accessible to specific parties that have the correct permissions in order to be able to access the incident logs that HikCentral now incorporates as well. And there's also no user management at the moment without this solution. So this is what we're going to take a look onto, what Hikvision have put a solution together for. So it's called the Evidence Management Solution from Hikvision, that's based on the HikCentral VMS software. So this easily allows users to collect, download different clips of footage and tie that to an evidence ID, which would be stored on an SFTP server, which you would add into the HikCentral platform through the web client, which we'll take a look at. I do have one set up that I can show with that. So this makes it a lot easier, especially if you're having multiple operators where they can share footage and multiple operators can add into that incident folder through HikCentral. So the main kind of application scenarios for this are your local authorities, councils, and government and office buildings. So when footage is downloaded, they might have to store the data for long term, for subsequent court hearings, for evidence or anything like that. And it also allows you to have a full audit trail and user management of who can actually access the incident logs and any footage or files that you have uploaded to that incident within the system. So this is just a general kind of overview of the architecture that's needed for the solution. So you can see there you've got your DVR or NVR with your cameras connected. Those would add into HikCentral as you normally would, and you'd have your control client running on PCs with your system administrator. But the addition to this is the evidence management server. So this would be using SFTP server on the system, and this would allow you to centrally store any backed up footage, get an additional option in the download section to save as evidence, which gives you a few extra options in the data that you want to input with that, which we'll come on to as well. So the key functions of the actual solution itself is to allow for easy and rapid evidence collection straight from the actual user interface, so not having to manually copy files to a specific storage location or anything like that. It's all automated through HikCentral with the connection to the SFTP server for the site. It also allows for flexible user management. So this would be your user accounts for the HikCentral software, and you can give users specific permissions to whether that be where they can just view any instance or evidence that's been saved, or whether they can add on to that, or in some cases, if the needs be after a predefined time, and they could have permission to remove that evidence. But the permissions would all be handled through HikCentral. And there's also the option for the instant reporting. So this gives you a graphic of the amount of incidents that have been collected and the different incident types, which you can manually set your own, depending on what that may be on the actual system there as well. So with the evidence collection, you can do it straight away through the live view of the actual camera through the HikCentral control client. When you're downloading footage, there's an extra tick box for save as evidence, which is just highlighted there on that small screenshot. I will show that on the system that I've got set up here for this demo. And this allows you to download footage from a single camera or multiple cameras relating to that incident, and it'll all get saved in a specific folder relating to that incident once it's created. And you can also upload your own files, documents, PDFs, images, or anything like that through HikCentral. And then it's all centrally collected on a secure FTP server, which is added into your HikCentral solution now. With the audit trails, this gives you specifically who's accessed that footage once it's been downloaded, who's created the evidence, what time it was created, what different cameras have been implemented into that as downloaded as evidence. It also gives you a unique ID number. So these may be ones that are specifically used on site where they have instant logs or anything like that. You can assign that when the evidence is created on HikCentral, so it's easier to then search back for on the actual system. And then so long as you've got the additional permissions on your HikCentral user account, that user would be able to go in and search for specific evidence types, whether or not police attended the site, they could filter it via that, or they could specifically search for an instant ID number in the evidence search function, which we'll take a look at on the live system that we've got set up here. With the actual instant reporting, so these can be generated per user on the actual control clients. So this will give you your pre-configured incident types, which you can change on the HikCentral web client. So if you have different incident types that you want to add in, it is customizable, so you can change that through there. And this would give you either a histogram or pie chart to represent all the data, so you can see that clearly and easily through the control client. And everything's also password protected as well. It's not easily accessible on the system. It is secure behind the actual user accounts. So within the actual HikCentral solution itself, you can also do screen recording during operations. This would actually screen record the screen from the control client. So you'll be able to see what the user did on the system, and that can be added into the evidence collection as well. So you can see exactly what each operator did relating to that incident. You've also got your alarm center through HikCentral, as well as your advanced user management. So it's a lot easier through HikCentral to manage multiple users and manage the specific permissions that they need for the system, which makes it a lot easier to manage, especially on larger systems where you're going to have multiple users, or you've got managers of the different operators. You can do escalation for events or anything like that. And all the data is stored securely, and it's encrypted using the HikCentral solution with the SFTP server. So now what we'll do is we'll just move on to the web client. So just make sure I'm logged in here still. So this is the web client of HikCentral. This is where you'd go to manage any settings or add in devices. It's kind of your back-end configuration for the full solution, as well as your user accounts. This is also where we'd go to manage our evidence collection system. So in order to actually add in the SFTP server, we need to go into our system menu and then go into evidence collection. And you can see here, we've got evidence collection enabled, and we've got the IP address of the SFTP server, which is my desktop PC, which I've got running a test SFTP server for this webinar. We then got our port and the username and password of the SFTP server. And I haven't put a path in here for this. This is just saving in the root directory of the SFTP server. But if you use your SFTP server for multiple different things and you want a specific file location that any of the HikCentral evidence files would need saving to, you can manually input that through the web client on there as well. And then what we've also got is we've got different evidence types, what organisations attended, and so be that police, ambulance, nursing staff, or anything like that. And we've also got the results of the actual event. What we can do is if we want to add in our own, so if we click on add next to evidence type here, I might just call this test evidence. Click on add. And you can see there that's being created as an additional evidence type, which I'll be able to set once I'm downloading footage through the HikCentral control clients. We've also got different departments or organisations we've got on site. I could go in and add one for security team. So this could be that the security team for the site attended the incident, and we can categorise that when we're downloading the footage to be used as evidence on the system there as well. And then we could, for example, if it was used in a shopping centre, we could use that the goods were covered as a result or conclusion for the system. We can also go in and edit these as well. So I can put the plural for goods, and any that we're not interested in, we can also go in and delete those as well if we don't need the other categories for that. We can go in and add and delete as you may see fit for your specific system for the site. Now that's all set up, what we can do is if I bring up our control client and just bring this across. So the control client for HikCentral is where you do any of the monitoring, such as your live view, playback, any events would all come through to your control client, which would run on a PC. There's also mobile clients as well that can connect to your HikCentral server if you're needing operatives with the HikCentral mobile app on the site as well. So it is a flexible kind of system. You can see we've got an option for evidence search in the bottom there. So if I clicked on that, you can see we've got a few different options. So this is searching back for any evidence that we've already got saved. So I can leave in the ID and keywords as blank, and I just want to search for any that's been uploaded in the last hour to our SFTP server. You can see there that there was evidence downloaded on that section there and what time it was uploaded by the actual control client time there. So I can then click on that evidence. You can see it gives a little screenshot of the actual evidence, and it will also give you the different evidence types. And so as long as you have permission, you can go in and edit these. But if the user doesn't have permission to edit the evidence, they won't be able to do that. They'll just be able to view it. If, for example, I then needed to be able to download this footage, what I can do is click on that icon there, and that will actually download that onto my local PC. So I'm then able to view that footage. At the moment, you can see that the evidence status is open, so it's an ongoing case or incident. At the top, I can just select the actual evidence and click on Close Evidence, and that will put it to a closed status within the HikCentral solution and mark it on the SFTP server as being closed. So if I go into our monitoring section, so this is where we would go to view the live view of the cameras and also playback footage. So if I switch to playback at the top there and double click on our front desk camera, you can see there that's playing back the footage from our front desk, from our main MVR on site. What I can do is I can go into export just as we normally would, click on the export button, and we can select the time and the date that we want set to. So we can use the timeline there, or we can go into this box here, click on it and put in our own dates and our own times, so the start and end time of the export manually if we wanted to do that. And it also gives you an option of what you're currently showing on that timeline. So you can download a different time from what you're actually playing back if you wanted to. What we've got, you can see there, is an option to save as evidence. So the options above and below are for normal exporting. But if we want to save this piece of exported footage as evidence on the system, we can click on the Save as Evidence there. And it gives us a new evidence that we can enter in there with the details that we want to add in. So for the evidence ID, I can just put in webinar test, the ID, or what I could do is give it an incident number. So this might be one that is used on site, that they use to log their instance, and then I can give it my own name of a webinar test. And for the evidence type, I can can go in, I can set it to robbery if I wanted to, and the organisation I can set to other, but those can be changed or your own ones added in as you see fit on the actual system. And for the results / conclusion, I can set that to no trace found, evidence status set to close, and then I can put in the description, robbery took place, individuals escaped. And spell it there. So if I then click on save, that's now downloading and uploading to the actual SFTP server that's sat on my PC there. You can see that's uploading to that storage location now. What we can then do is go back to our evidence search tab and search again for any evidence in the last hour. You can see there that our webinar test piece of evidence is now showing. If, for example, we had an additional piece of footage that we wanted to add into our evidence, we can go back into our export again, select a different time that we want to add into the evidence that we've already downloaded, and then we can click on Save as Evidence again. But instead of creating a new piece of evidence, we want to add to existing evidence. Then I can search for webinar, search by name, so you can see that there. It's showing the evidence I've already downloaded, the one that I named as webinar test. So if I select on that and then click save, that will actually save that clip into the original piece of evidence that I've already saved to the system. We can go back into our download center and we can see that that's uploading to the SFTP server. And if I then go into search for the actual system, and then click search again. If I go into our webinar test now, you can now see that there's actually two pieces of footage that are added into the system there. So you can see we've got our webinar test, which is our original one, and the new one that we've just added in, and you can see those shown in the content of the actual evidence. So you can see a snapshot of the actual evidence there, and we can then go in and download the actual two files as we want to there, which will download locally on the PC. And we can also go in and add in our own notes. Add that in, and that's saved it. Now, anyone that has permission to see any evidence that's been logged on the system will be able to see the comments that I've put in to the actual evidence solution, and then that would then store that there, and you can then search through in the actual evidence search for any incidents that have occurred on the actual system. What we can then do is, if we go into home and then go to our audit trail, and I want to search for specific users. So if I search for myself, and search for today, what you can see there is my user, which is Nathan G. You can see when I've edited evidence, which piece of evidence it is that I've edited, when I've played back, and also when I've searched different types of evidence, which is all fully saved on the system. It's a full audit trail, so you can see exactly what any user has done on the system, whether or not they've downloaded footage, if they've edited any footage, when they've logged in or anything like that. It gives you a full audit trail, which is important for larger control rooms or anything like that. They'll be able to see exactly what any of the operators or users have done on the system, who's accessed specific evidence types, and who's been searching, looking at different evidence types and footage through the HikCentral solution, which makes it a really powerful solution. It makes it a lot easier for sites to be able to manage exactly what's being done on the system. If they get audited, for example, and someone needs to know exactly who's had access to an incident, they'll be able to go in and search straight on the system to see exactly who's actually accessed that. So if I selected this one and a search for all users. And I want to search for resource name as webinar test. So this is searching for anyone that's accessed the webinar test evidence. And I click search there. You can then see that all of them are actually showing on the system there with the resource name as webinar test, and it's only myself that you can see there that has actually edited the evidence that's being given as webinar test. So if you add an incident number, you can put that into search on the audit trail and see exactly who's accessed that incident, who's edited any of the actual details of the incident, who's watched it, or who's downloaded it or anything like that would show in this audit log, which makes it a really powerful solution. A lot more manageable control rooms to use as well. So that was just a quick look at the HikCentral evidence management. So we can go on to, just wanted to cover a bit on our tech support as well. So our tech support team always ready to answer your calls on the phones and via our email at technical@dynamic-cctv.com. And we're also on our social media quite a lot as well with any updates or anything like that. So please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels and our social pages for that. So we can go on to our Q&A section now. So at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to hover over and there'll be a Q&A. If you click on that and type in any questions that you've got, or alternatively, you can contact me via my contact details on the screen there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got. So Nilesh has asked, can you select a specific event such as intrusion detection when doing a search? So when you're playing back on HikCentral, you can search by events that have been triggered on a recorder, or what you can do is after effect searching. So using motion detection or line crossing, you can search back for anyone that's crossed that line on footage, even if they haven't had it enabled on the actual unit. So you can search it that way. And then when you download that footage, you can then set it to export or save as evidence for that footage type, which would make it a lot easier to find in footage when you're using continuous recording on the system, which makes it a lot more powerful on HikCentral and a lot easier to find events that have happened on the system. Nilesh has also asked, can you merge evidence from different cameras? So when you're downloading footage through the HikCentral control client, you can do it for multiple cameras. So it creates an evidence folder based on the ID and the evidence name that you give on the SFTP server, and you can store multiple cameras, multiple time dates, even files in that folder, which you can upload through HikCentral. And so it can come from, the evidence can in effect come from multiple cameras on the system, and it can be across multiple MVRs as well, because you're uploading it through your control client to your SFTP server through that there. But thank you for joining me today. If you require any more information or you want to ask any questions about anything relating to HikCentral or the evidence management solution, please feel free to contact me. My details are on screen there. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar in 2 weeks' time as well. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.